The collector turned the Purple Heart over in his palm, wiped his thumb across the tarnished back, and read the name beneath the ribbon. Thomas Avery. My daughter stopped talking in the middle of a sentence. The woman holding the cash box looked from him to me. Two neighbors standing near my old drill press went quiet. Even the little paper price tag tied to the metal seemed suddenly obscene, swinging there on its white string. $275. The collector looked at the framed photograph on the sale table. It showed me at 21 in Vietnam, lean as a fence rail, grease on my fatigues, one hand resting on the hood of a damaged transport truck. Then he looked at the metal again. "Mr. Keene," he said, "who was Thomas Avery?" I was sitting in a folding chair beside my own garage because I still couldn't stand for long after the fall. My walker was parked against the wall. Around me, strangers were buying pieces of the life I had spent 50 years assembling: socket sets, fishing rods, Louise's blue mixing bowls, the oak desk I had refinished after retirement. But all I could see was that metal in a stranger's hand. My daughter Megan stepped between us. There must be some mistake. My father earned that in Vietnam. That was the moment I could have protected her. I could have said she didn't know. I could have said she had written the advertisement based on what people in town had believed for years. I could have taken responsibility before another person had time to form the wrong conclusion. Instead, I looked at the name I had kept hidden for more than half a century and said nothing. My name is Walter Keene. I'm 74 years old, and for 38 years I kept school buses running in Augusta County, Virginia. I built my reputation on noticing what other people missed. Then at 74, I missed the edge of my own back step. It had rained that morning. My boot slid on the back step, my left leg folded under me, and I landed hard enough to fracture my femur and crack two ribs. Megan drove down from Fairfax before they had me out of surgery. She is 46, organized to the point that even her worry comes in labeled folders. Within 4 days, she knew my refrigerator was nearly empty, the back handrail was loose, and the county tax bill had a red notice attached. I had not told her I was behind. The bill was not enormous by some people's standards, but $6,840 might as well have been $60,000 when most of your savings had already gone to a new roof, dental work, and the last 2 years of your wife's cancer treatment. Louise had been gone 6 years. I had managed since then by keeping my expenses narrow and my pride wide. Megan found the red notice during the week she stayed at my house after I left rehabilitation. "Dad, why didn't you call me?" "Because I can read a tax bill without help." "Reading it isn't the same as paying it." "I have a plan." My plan was to sell the old Ford tractor after spring planting season when I thought someone would pay more for it. I also had a certificate of deposit maturing in 4 months. Neither answer satisfied her because the county deadline was 6 weeks away and the occupational therapist had just handed us a list of changes I needed before I could safely live alone: grab bars, a wider bathroom doorway, better lighting in the hall, and a ramp that would cost more than I expected. Megan proposed an estate sale. I hated the phrase immediately. "I'm not dead. It's just what the company calls it. We can sell what you don't need, cover the taxes, and make the house safe." She was not wrong about the clutter. I had 3 torque wrenches, 5 radios, boxes of bus parts nobody manufactured anymore, and enough scrap metal to build a small bridge. But when someone is injured, the distance between help and takeover can shrink before either person notices. Megan began with the things I agreed to sell. Then she kept moving. She hired Blue Ridge Estate Services. Their manager, Patrice Nolan, photographed the furniture and tools while I was at physical therapy. Megan promised they would ask before selling anything personal. The metals were in a cedar box on the top shelf of my bedroom closet. Along with the Purple Heart were my National Defense Service Medal, Vietnam Service Medal, Republic of Vietnam Campaign Medal, unit patches, ribbons, and photographs. The Purple Heart sat in its black presentation case. A folded square of old tissue covered the engraved back. I had moved that box from apartment to apartment, then into the house Louise and I bought in 1978. I had hidden it from dust, children, burglars, and questions. Apparently, I had not hidden it from a daughter cleaning out a closet. 3 days before the sale, Megan showed me the online listing on her phone. "Look," she said, "Patrice already has more than 400 people interested." The headline read, estate of decorated Vietnam veteran Walter Keene. Below it were photographs of my tool chest, bus memorabilia, furniture, military patches, and the open black case containing the Purple Heart. I felt the muscles in my neck tighten. Take the medals out. Megan scrolled past the photograph. The military collection is bringing serious buyers, Dad. One man is driving from North Carolina. I said, take them out. They're things you never display and never talk about. The money could cover the bathroom doorway by itself. They are not for sale. She looked at me for a long second. Why? I should have told her then. Instead, I said, because I served for them. It was not exactly a lie. That was how I had survived for so long, by choosing sentences that were technically true and letting other people supply the false part. Megan put the phone in her pocket. Fine, I'll tell Patrice. The morning of the sale, my pain medication made me sleep until nearly 10. By the time I came outside, cars lined both sides of the road and strangers were carrying away my belongings. I saw the medal table less than 10 minutes before the collector picked up the Purple Heart. His name was Daniel Brooks. He was soft-spoken and handled every object as if someone had trusted him with it. When he read Thomas Avery's name, his expression did not become accusing. It became careful. That somehow made it worse. Megan turned to Patrice. I told you this collection was my father's. Patrice held up both hands. The consignment sheet says Purple Heart, Vietnam, Keene family provenance. That's what you gave me, because that's what it is. Daniel placed the medal gently in its case. The engraving appears authentic. If Thomas Avery was the recipient, I need to know how it came into Mr. Keene's possession. One of my neighbors, Ron Pritchard, spoke before I did. Walter got wounded over there. Everybody knows that. His picture is in the Veterans Hall. I had been wounded. A piece of metal had entered below my right shoulder and another had cut the side of my neck. I still had the scars, but the Army classified the injuries in a way I never challenged, tied to circumstances I had spent a lifetime avoiding. I was treated, returned to duty, and never received a Purple Heart. Megan stared at me. Dad, there are questions that do not sound loud but split a life into before and after. I asked Patrice to close the sale. She protested that purchases had already been recorded, and Megan suggested removing only the military table. Close it, I repeated. Now. Within 20 minutes, the road was clearing. Daniel remained beside the table. I don't want the medal, he said, but if you need help identifying the family, I know people who do that work. I know who the family is. It was the first honest thing I had said. Megan waited until everyone except Patrice and her workers had left. Then she carried the black case into the garage and set it on my workbench. Who was Thomas Avery? A man in my unit. Did he give this to you? No. Did his family? No. Her face changed as each answer landed. Did you steal it? No. Then explain it. I told her I would, but not with Patrice standing there. Patrice removed the advertisement and handed Megan the consignment sheet. Before leaving, she pointed to a line near the bottom. You initialed here, Megan. This says you confirmed ownership and description of all items submitted. Megan's cheeks went red. My father told me he served for those medals, and you told me he was a Purple Heart veteran. Patrice left us in the garage with two separate lies, trying to decide which one had created the other. If you're wondering how a person keeps a secret for 50 years, it isn't by telling one enormous lie every morning. It is by telling a small truth at the right angle, then staying quiet while everyone else builds around it. Thomas Avery was from Bristol, Tennessee. He was 23 when I met him in 1970, 2 years older and already a better soldier than I would ever become. He had a wife named Carol and a younger sister he wrote to every Sunday. He kept family photographs inside his shirt. We were assigned to a maintenance support unit. I worked on trucks and generators. Thomas drove recovery vehicles and could coax a damaged engine through terrible mud. 3 months before he died, shrapnel tore into his left calf during a mortar attack. He was awarded a Purple Heart and sent back to duty after recovery. I remember teasing him that the metal case was too clean for our quarters. He told me his mother would like it and that he planned to carry it home himself. On November 18th, our convoy was ordered to withdraw from a stretch of road after reports of enemy movement. One cargo truck had lost power near a bend. I had serviced it the previous week. I was convinced the problem was a fuel connection I could repair in 5 minutes. My sergeant told me to leave it. I argued that the truck carried equipment we could not afford to lose. He ordered me back into the recovery vehicle. When his attention shifted to the radio, I took my tool bag and went to the disabled truck anyway. The repair took longer than 5 minutes. The first shots hit the windshield. I dropped behind the engine compartment. A blast threw metal through my shoulder and neck and left me half conscious in the road ditch. Thomas could have stayed with the departing vehicles. Instead, he turned back. He reached me under fire, dragged me by the straps of my vest, and got me behind the wheel assembly. I remember his hand against my face and his voice telling me to stay awake. I remember trying to tell him the truck would run now, as if that mattered. He was killed before the recovery team reached us. The official report said we had been hit while attempting emergency recovery. It did not say that I had violated a direct order. My sergeant knew. Two other men knew. Thomas was recommended for a posthumous Bronze Star with Valor. I spent 11 days in a hospital and months asking why the paperwork did not describe what I had done. When I returned stateside, Thomas's Purple Heart had remained with our section instead of entering the formal shipment to his family. First Sergeant Malloy handed it to me with Thomas's letters and photographs. "You're close enough to Bristol," he said. "Take these to Mrs. Avery. Tell her what her son did." I promised I would. I drove as far as Abingdon. Then I sat in a diner parking lot for 2 hours with the medal on the passenger seat and imagined Thomas's mother asking why her son had gone back. I imagined his sister asking whether he had to. I imagined telling them that he died correcting my disobedience. I turned north and drove home. For years I told myself I was waiting until I could speak without falling apart. Then Thomas's mother moved, a letter came back undelivered, and the delay itself became something I would have to explain. Louise knew part of the truth. She knew the medal belonged to a man who saved me. She asked me more than once to find his family, but she believed I had been unable to locate them, not that I had stopped trying. The town's mistake began at a Memorial Day display in 1989. Our church asked veterans to bring photographs and service items. Louise placed my medals and Thomas's case together on a table before I arrived. Someone from the local paper took a picture. The caption called me Purple Heart recipient Walter Keene. I saw it the next day. I did not call the paper. Years later, the Veterans Organization hung my photograph in its hall with my service dates listed beneath it. Thomas's medal was displayed in the same shadow box. The plaque did not explicitly say it was mine, but people assumed. At school ceremonies, principals introduced me as a decorated wounded veteran. I corrected the word hero sometimes. I never corrected the medal. That distinction allowed me to sleep. After I finished, Megan sat on an overturned bucket across from me. She had stopped crying halfway through the story. What remained on her face was harder than grief. "You let me defend you out there. I was ashamed. You let me tell that man the medal was yours. I never told you it was." The second I said it, I heard how cowardly it sounded. Megan stood. "No, you just kept it with your medals. You let the newspaper say it. You let the Veterans Hall display it. You told me you served for it. But because you never arranged the exact words in the exact order, this is somehow everyone else's mistake." I had investigated mechanical failures for decades. When a brake line burst, I did not blame the last person who pressed the pedal if corrosion had been spreading for years. Yet I wanted to blame Megan for the sale, as if my silence had not placed the medal in her hands. Still, she had her own truth to tell. I pointed to the consignment sheet. "Why did you leave it after I told you to take the medals out?" Her eyes shifted toward the garage door. "Patrice said the listing had already brought collectors." "That isn't an answer. The contractor's estimate went up. The bathroom plumbing has to be moved. The sale wasn't going to make enough without the military collection. So you ignored me. I thought you were being sentimental. It was my property. And it was my name on the contract because you couldn't even sit through the inventory meeting. You wrote decorated veteran and advertised the Purple Heart." She crossed her arms, then let them fall. "Yes. Did you know those words raised the value?" "Yes." That was the answer that broke something between us. Megan had seen auction listings. She knew a grouping tied to a named veteran could attract far more interest than separate medals. She had used my photograph and reputation to create a story around the objects. She had not known the Purple Heart belonged to Thomas, but she had known I wanted it removed. She chose the price over my permission. By evening, screenshots of the listing had spread through local veterans groups. The commander of Post 184, Curtis Bell, asked me to come in the next morning. Megan wanted us to speak with a lawyer first. To protect what? I asked. You, me, the estate company. We don't know whether keeping the medal was a crime. We don't know whether the family could sue. Thomas ran into gunfire before he knew whether anyone would protect him. I can walk into a meeting. That night I held the medal under my bedside lamp. The letters were shallow but clear. Thomas E. Avery. I had spent 50 years avoiding that name while keeping it in my closet. At the Veterans Hall, Curtis waited with two board members, Daniel, Megan, and Patrice. My photograph still hung on the wall behind them. Curtis had known me for 27 years. He did not look angry. He looked tired. Walter, he said, we need you to tell us what is true, all of it. So I did. I told them about Thomas's earlier wound, the medal, the disabled truck, the order I ignored, and the promise I broke. I told them about the newspaper caption and every introduction I had allowed to pass. I did not call it a misunderstanding. I called it what it was, a long lie made mostly of silence. Then I told them Megan had not known the name on the back. But I told her not to sell the medals, I said. She left them in the sale because she believed the Purple Heart would bring more money. That part belongs to her. The false history belongs to me. Megan flinched, but she nodded. She explained the tax bill, the renovation estimate, and the listing. She admitted she had used my reputation and signed the ownership declaration without checking the engraving. Patrice wanted a written record that the medal had never been sold. Daniel offered to document it and help trace Thomas's family. Curtis looked past me at my photograph. Did you serve in Vietnam? Yes. Were you injured? Yes. Did Thomas Avery save your life? Yes. Then none of that needs decoration, but this hall cannot keep telling a story that isn't true. I agreed. The board removed the shadow box that morning. I carried it to the table myself. My other medals were mine, but I asked them to store everything until we decided how to correct the display. Daniel found Thomas's family in 4 days. His parents and younger sister were gone. But his sister had a daughter, Elaine Avery Lawson, an 8th-grade history teacher outside Knoxville. Thomas had no surviving children. Daniel called her first. Then she asked to speak with me. I had rehearsed an explanation. When I heard her voice, every prepared sentence disappeared. Mrs. Lawson, my name is Walter Keene. I served with your uncle. I have something that belongs to your family. The medal, she said. Yes. The collector told me. There is more you need to know. Then tell me in person. She drove to Virginia the following Saturday with her husband and a canvas folder full of family papers. Megan came to the hall but stayed near the back. Curtis arranged chairs in a circle instead of putting us behind a table. Elaine was 58. She had Thomas's dark eyes and the same patient way of waiting through another person's silence. She placed a photograph between us. It showed Thomas in uniform beside his mother, his left leg still bandaged from the wound that earned the Purple Heart. We have the telegram, his Bronze Star citation, and most of the things the Army sent home, she said. My grandmother always believed the Purple Heart was lost overseas. I put the black case on the table. It wasn't lost. I kept it. Then I told the story again, this time without protecting the young man I had been. When I described leaving the convoy, Elaine closed her eyes. When I described Thomas coming back for me, she pressed 2 fingers against her mouth. I told her I had driven toward Bristol with the medal and turned around. I told her about the newspaper, the ceremonies, and the sale. I didn't pin it to my coat, I said. I never stood up and said the Army awarded it to me. I used that as an excuse. People gave me respect that belonged in part to Thomas, and I accepted it because correcting them would have forced me to tell why he died. Elaine opened the case. For a while she said nothing. Then she asked, Did you ever speak his name at those ceremonies? No. That answer hurt her more than anything else. My mother spent her life trying to make sure he wasn't reduced to a telegram, she said, and his medal sat under another man's photograph. Yes, I need you to understand that returning it does not repair 50 years. I understand. No, you don't, not yet. She was right. She took the medal, the photographs Thomas had carried, and the letters First Sergeant Malloy had given me. I had kept all of them. Some people later praised me for preserving them. I do not accept praise for returning what I should never have withheld. Elaine had brought copies of Thomas's official records. One citation confirmed how he died while assisting a wounded soldier during the recovery of a disabled vehicle. It did not name me. My family never knew who the soldier was, she said. It was me. She looked at me for a long time. Then you are the reason he died. Megan moved forward, but I raised my hand. Yes, I said. Elaine shook her head. You are a reason he was there. The person who killed him is the reason he died. The war is a reason. His choice to go back is a reason. I won't simplify my uncle's life just to punish you. I could not answer. She closed the metal case and drew it toward her. And I won't call you a fraud. You served. You were wounded. You carried guilt that should have made you tell the truth, but instead it made you hide from it. That was cowardly. It doesn't erase everything else you did before or after. People are more inconvenient than one word. Megan began to cry behind me. Elaine turned toward her. You put this in a sale? Yes. I didn't know it was your uncle's, but my father told me to remove the medals and I didn't. I used the Purple Heart in the listing because it attracted buyers. Why? Megan explained the taxes in the house. Elaine listened, then said, helping someone doesn't make everything you choose on their behalf yours to choose. Megan nodded. I know that now. But knowing something in a meeting is not the same as living by it afterward. The estate sale money was returned, the tax deadline remained. So did the unsafe bathroom and back steps. Megan wanted to pay the bill from her savings. I refused. She accused me of choosing pride over the house again. I accused her of using money as a key to every locked door. We finally did what we should have done before the sale. We separated the emergencies. The county agreed to a payment plan, and a home modification grant covered the ramp and grab bars. I sold the Ford tractor at a fair price and used the money for the doorway and taxes. Megan and I made a new inventory together. Nothing left the house without my written approval. In return, I gave her permission to review tax notices and contractor invoices until I was fully mobile. She got information, not ownership. I got help, not the right to pretend help was unnecessary. The Veterans Organization held an open meeting 2 weeks later. Curtis did not require me to speak publicly. Elaine did not ask me to. I chose to because the false story had been public, and a private apology would have protected my comfort more than Thomas's name. About 60 people came, including neighbors who had heard me introduced incorrectly at school assemblies. I stood with my walker beside the empty space where my photograph had been. I told them Thomas Avery's name. I told them the Purple Heart was his. I told them he had earned it before the day he saved me and that I had promised to deliver it to his family. I admitted that I had let the community believe it was mine. I did not blame the newspaper, Louise, the hall, or Megan. When I finished, nobody applauded. I was grateful for that. One veteran asked whether I had falsified benefit records or worn the medal. I had done neither. A retired teacher said those details mattered legally, but not morally. I agreed. There was no vote on whether I remained a good man. 2 members would not speak to me afterward. Others shook my hand but did not say it was all right. Curtis asked me to step away from school presentations until the display was corrected. Those consequences felt proportionate because they were not designed to destroy me or excuse me. They required me to live where the truth could be seen. What would you have done in Elaine's place? Taken the medal and walked away, or allowed the man who kept it to help tell the truth about the person who earned it? Elaine chose something I had not expected. She loaned the Purple Heart to a veterans museum in Tennessee for a 1-year exhibit about Thomas. The label includes his service, the earlier wound, his death, and the 50-year delay in returning the medal. My name appears in one paragraph, not as the owner and not as the hero, but as the soldier he saved and the man who failed to keep a promise. If we hide the ugly part, she told me, we repeat your mistake in the opposite direction. Megan accepted responsibility for the inaccurate listing. Patrice added stricter rules for military items, including proof of ownership before advertising. Daniel refused payment for his research. Megan and I did not repair our trust with one apology. For months, she asked before moving anything. She was practicing a boundary I had defended too late. I practiced one too. When a bill arrived that I could not pay, I told her before the envelope turned red. In July, she helped me return to the garage. I sat on a stool while she handed me tools to repair the loose backstep rail. Halfway through, she asked why I had never told her about Thomas when she was growing up. Because you thought I was brave, I said. I thought you were brave because you raised me after Mom got sick, because you showed up when my first marriage fell apart, because you could make a bus engine run in January with parts nobody else could find. I didn't need the medal. I looked down at the bolt in my hand. I think I did, I said. That was the truth underneath all the others. I had kept Thomas's medal because it punished me, but also because it protected me. As long as people saw it and assumed I had received it, the wound on my shoulder looked like proof of sacrifice instead of evidence of disobedience. Their admiration covered the part of the story I could not bear to face. Thomas deserved better than being used as either my shield or my sentence. 3 months after the estate sale, the Veterans Hall invited Elaine back to unveil the new display. She brought her husband, two of her students, and a reproduction of Thomas's photograph. The original medal was already at the museum, so Daniel arranged for a high-resolution image of its front and engraved back. My photograph went back on the wall, too. The old plaque had accurately listed my Army service and community work, but the Purple Heart under the glass had told a different story. The new display was larger. On the left was my photograph and a brief account of my service as a maintenance specialist. It stated plainly that I was injured during an unauthorized attempt to recover a vehicle and that I was not awarded the Purple Heart. On the right was Thomas. Thomas E. Avery, U.S. Army, Purple Heart recipient, killed November 18, 1970, while returning under fire to rescue Walter Keene. Below both photographs was one final sentence. The truth was delayed for 50 years. His name will not be delayed again. Megan stood beside me as I read it. Is that too harsh? She asked. No. Is it enough? I looked at Thomas's face. He was 23 forever. I had been allowed to become a husband, a father, a mechanic, a widower, and an old man with a repaired bathroom, and a daughter still willing to stand beside me. It can't be enough, I said, but it can be true. Elaine heard me. She came over and adjusted the bottom corner of Thomas's photograph, though it was already straight. Then she asked if I would tell her students what kind of mechanic he had been. So I told them how Thomas could listen to an engine for 10 seconds and identify a bad bearing. I told them he sang off key, hated powdered eggs, and carried family photographs inside his shirt. I told them about the wound that earned his medal before he ever saved me. For the first time in 50 years, I spoke about Thomas without making his death a story about my guilt. The medal was no longer in my house. My photograph no longer borrowed meaning from it. Megan no longer had to defend a history I had never trusted her with. And beneath the ribbon, where a collector had found the name that stopped an estate sale, Thomas Avery's name was finally where everyone could read it.